When you see what these large language models can do, it feels like magic, right? But what if I told you that behind the curtain, the real secret is surprisingly simple? It all comes down to what they eat.
I know. It sounds like a weird question. What does an AI eat? But honestly, it might be the most important question we can ask about them. Because just like us, an AI is shaped by what it consumes. Its knowledge, its skills, its worldview, it all comes from its data diet.
There's this old saying, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And you know what? It perfectly captures the core principle of building an AI. The quality of what you get out, whether that's a brilliant poem or a totally broken piece of code, depends entirely on the quality of the data you put in. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
So, you could think of the code as the engine, sure. But the data? That's the fuel. It's the whole foundation, the root system that the entire model grows from. So, let's get to it. What's actually on the menu? All right, let's dive into the first course. This is the biggest part of an AI's diet, and it's called pre-training data. This is the foundational feast where the model learns, well, pretty much everything. The basics of language, facts about the world, and how to reason. And it does this on an absolutely massive scale. And when I say massive, I am not kidding. Just look at that number. A recent survey of publicly available datasets found over 774 terabytes of this stuff. To put that in perspective, that's like millions upon millions of books. This is the absolute bedrock of the AI's knowledge.
So what's in this giant meal? Well, it's a whole buffet of different food groups. The AI is basically chowing down on a huge chunk of the internet. Web pages, books, academic papers, tons of code, social media, encyclopedias, you name it. This super varied diet is what gives it that universal, general understanding of how we humans talk and think.
Okay, now this is really cool. It's not just about dumping a bunch of data in, it's about the recipe. This here is a famous dataset called the pile, and it shows you how they balance the ingredients. You've got academic stuff for rigor, web pages for all that chaotic diversity, books for deep context, and code to teach it logic. It's a really carefully crafted mix designed to create a well-rounded AI.
But here's the thing. Just like with our food, you can't just serve up the raw ingredients. I mean, you wouldn't eat a potato straight out of the dirt, right? Same idea here. Raw data from the internet is messy. It's full of junk, duplicates, and even harmful stuff. It has to be cleaned up first. And that whole process is called pre-processing.
Think of this as the kitchen where the AI's food is prepared. It's a whole pipeline. First, you collect all the data. Then you filter it, which is super important for getting rid of low-quality or toxic content. After that, you deduplicate it, get rid of all the copies to make things more efficient. Then you standardize it, so it's all in a nice, consistent format. And often, at the very end, a human will do a final review. Every single one of these steps is absolutely crucial to get a good result.
Okay, so at this point, our AI has basically swallowed a Library of Congress worth of knowledge. It's incredibly smart. But it doesn't really know how to be helpful yet. That brings us to the next stage, which is kind of like a finishing school. It's all about teaching the AI not just what it knows, but how to behave. And this is where a special kind of diet comes in, instruction fine-tuning. You can think of it like a giant set of digital flashcards. Each card has an instruction, like, summarize this article for me, and then the perfect answer. By studying thousands of these, the AI learns to go from just predicting the next word to actually following a command. It's a huge leap. Now, where do these flashcards come from? Well, there are basically two ways to do it, and each has its pros and cons. First, you can have humans write them. This is like a 5-star home-cooked meal. The quality is amazing, but it's really slow and expensive. The other option? You can have another AI generate them. This is more like fast food. It's quick, it's cheap, you can make a ton of it, but the quality can be a little all over the place. All right, so our AI is smart and it can follow instructions. We're getting somewhere. But what about values? How do you teach it to be, well, good? To be helpful, honest, and most importantly, safe? How do you get it to align with what we humans actually want?
That brings us to the final and maybe most important ingredient, preference data. This is a very special kind of data designed to shape the AI's personality. See, this isn't about teaching it more facts. This is about teaching it values. You do that by showing the model which answers humans prefer, which ones we think are more helpful, more honest, or safer.
And how do you capture that preference? It's actually pretty straightforward.
You get a bunch of humans, you show them a few different responses the AI came up with, and you ask them to pick the best one. Or maybe you have them rank the responses from best to worse, or just give each one a score, like 1 to 10. All that feedback gets fed back into the system to basically reward the AI for giving answers that people actually like.
So after all that, the massive feast, the finishing school, the lessons in good behavior, it's time for the final exam. We've got to have a way to check our work, right? To objectively measure if this whole diet and education plan actually worked. And we do that using something called evaluation datasets. The best way to think about these is like standardized tests for AIs. Seriously, they're like the SATs, but for language models. They're these carefully curated sets of questions and benchmarks that let us measure an AI's skills in a consistent way. This is how we can compare different models and see if they're actually getting better.
And what's on these tests? Well, a little bit of everything. They're checking for things like reasoning ability, can it solve a logic puzzle? Factual accuracy, does it get its facts right? They even test for deep knowledge in specific areas like law or medicine. And crucially, they also test for safety and whether it understands social norms. The goal is to make sure the AI isn't just smart, but that it's also responsible.
So, where do we go from here? This whole process of feeding and training AIs is changing all the time, and it comes with some really big challenges. You could almost call them the next big frontiers in AI nutrition.
We are grappling with some huge questions here. How do we make sure the data is diverse and doesn't just bake in our existing biases? How do we stop an AI's knowledge from getting stale and outdated? What does good data even mean, and how do we measure it? And maybe the biggest one of all, how do we handle the legal and ethical minefield of sourcing all this information responsibly?
At the end of the day, the most important thing to remember from all of this is actually pretty simple, but it's also incredibly profound. An AI is just a reflection of us. It's a mirror held up to the mountain of text we feed it. Everything it knows, every bias it has, every single one of its blind spots, it all comes directly from its diet.
And that leaves us with one last really big question. As these AI systems get more and more powerful, as they get woven